Hey music lovers, thank you for dropping by the channel and for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be talking about Weezer today. Yeah, Weezer's been around for nearly 25 years, but last year they really caused a stir when they put out their cover version of Africa by Toto. And, I did a whole video about this topic when it first came out. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. I'll put a link up to it. Let's just say that I did give Weezer the Worst Cover of the Year award for 2018 in my rear end review, and I'll put a link up to that Weezer video so you can check it out. The 80s Africa has got so much character, so much going on in the production that, Weezer's run-through just lost it all, and so I really didn't care for the Weezer cover. But then again, who the hell am I? Because everybody else seemed to like it. Toto loved it. They returned the favor. They did a cover of Hash Pipe by Weezer. A great, great song. Toto's cover was also good. I just think that it's better as a Weezer song. They sound better doing it. But Weezer went on to, perform it live on late night television. They did a proper video for Africa that had Weird Al. They even added it to their concert set lists. Saturday Night Live did a sketch about Weezer not too long ago. So it's like all this Weezer stuff is blowing up. And then Weezer, just last month, January 24th, dropped the Teal Album, which is 9 more covers in addition to Africa on this new covers album that fans were just, I guess, unexpectedly, shocked with. This album has just got all kinds of covers, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even into the 90s. You get stuff like Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears, Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics, Take On Me by a-ha. There's a cover of Billie Jean. There's a cover of Happy Together from the Turtles, No Scrubs by TLC, Mr. Blue Sky from ELO. There's a cover of Stand By Me by Benny King, and of course Paranoid from Black Sabbath. So all these songs are covered by Weezer on their new Teal album, which will see a retail release on March the 8th. So I've listened to this album a couple of times, and it's just very vanilla. It's kind of like a note for note run through of these songs. There's nothing new. There's nothing exciting. There's nothing different. They don't make the songs their own. I'm not saying that they do a bad job with them. Rivers Cuomo actually sounds pretty good singing a lot of these songs. But after I'm done, it makes me want to go reach for the original. It kind of reminds me of why the originals were so great. It's because we had, at one point, great singers and great songwriters and great bands, great producers. And that all seems to be lost on this album. These songs, like I said, they're just very generic sounding. There's nothing new here. It kind of just washes over you and then you're done. And maybe that's what they want. But it does highlight to me what we've been missing in music, We just don't have the great bands, the great singers and songwriting, and the great craftsmanship in the studio like we used to have. I talked about the SNL skit before. The SNL skit, which I'm going to put a link to, I've got a companion playlist for this video that I'm going to put a link to down below, filled with a bunch of the videos that I'm talking about here. And so the premise of this skit was that there were just these couples that had gotten together to welcome this new couple to the neighborhood, and they were just sitting around talking, and Africa comes on, the Weezer version, and Matt Damon was the host that week, and his character was like, oh, have you guys heard this? This is the new Weezer song, the cover of Africa. And so he gets into a conversation with Leslie Jones about Weezer, and they go back and forth about which era of Weezer was best. And it begins to get heated. Leslie Jones has a certain era, like the early phase, that she's into and doesn't think that the rest of it's any good, whereas Damon loves the later day Weezer and is defending that. And my favorite part of the video is when he stands up and he basically tells her, no offense, but burn in hell, and it gets really heated. Leslie Jones has this wine glass in her hand that she crushes with her bare hands, and they go back and forth. And it reminds me of, how we as fans get into these heated debates about which eras of our favorite bands are best. Just talking off the top of my head, like one of my favorite bands is Rush, and I would have to say that, Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures is kind of their sweet spot. And by that, I mean 2 albums back to back where like most every song, if not every song, is great. And or like with Def Leppard, Pyromania and Hysteria, where like most of the songs were on the radio or they could have been. And you can take a lot of bands and you can come up with a sweet spot. But what I say is a sweet spot might not be yours. But I think that on Weezer's Teal album, they really hit the sweet spots of a lot of the bands that they're covering. Like with Tears for Fears and Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I had this conversation with a friend last year. Everybody Wants to Rule the World came up, and I was of the attitude of, yeah, that's their best song. That's my favorite song. And my friend was like, no, what are you talking about? That's not their best song. Sowing the Seeds of Love is their best song. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, the production, blah, blah, blah. And so it kind of reminds me of how, we defend our favorite eras. And I'd be interested to hear what some of yours are for some of your favorite bands. Another one, Aha, Take On Me. That's a band that we can slag off and say here in the States, especially, their first album had a couple of hits on it and then we didn't hear from them again, but they went on to have major success in Europe with these #1 albums and everything. They're still around. Original guys are still around and they're still sounding really, really good too. As a matter of fact, I recently heard a cover version that Aha did of Take On Me. They did a cover of their own song. They teamed up with this guy named Kygo, who is this Norwegian DJ and a producer, and they performed it live at this like Nobel Peace Prize concert. And I thought that they did a really interesting take on it. And that also kind of gets back to what I was talking about earlier with these cover songs, that there's nothing new here. The Aha cover of their own song was a different take on it. I heard a cover version of Billie Jean by Michael Jackson that was done by Robert Randolph and the Family Band. I'll put a link to that down below too. That's a song that's tough to cover without looking like a schmuck because it's such a Michael Jackson song. If you don't have Michael Jackson, you really run the risk of blowing it. But Robert Randolph, what they did was, of course, if you know anything about Robert Randolph, he's this great, great slide guitar player. And so he sits down at the slide guitar and he wails, and he's such a great player. And their version of Billie Jean had no vocals. He played the vocal line on the slide, and it was brilliant. It sounded really, really good. That's a good cover. I like that approach. But if you're just going to do a note-for-note run-through, then why bother? And that's my problem with this Teal album, is that it doesn't offer up anything new, and it kind of reminds me of what we've lost and what we don't have, which are these great singers and songwriters and producers. I want to know what you guys think. What do you think about the Teal album? What do you think about sweet spots from your favorite bands? I want you to drop those below and let me know. Like I said, the Teal album is going to be coming out officially on March the 8th. Weezer has a new studio album coming out. The Black Album is going to be coming out on March the 1st. Of course, Weezer doing these color albums is nothing new. They've already got like a green album and a blue album and a red album and a white album. And so they're just adding to their colors. But I think this one is more of a vanilla album based on what I'm hearing. So, let me know what you think. Drop it in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button too. I've got more videos coming at you, so stay tuned, all right? See you later.